Hello, my name is Dr. Beth Gineris. I'm the author of Turning No to On, The Art of Parenting with Mindfulness. And today I would like to talk about willfulness and willpower. And I feel that willfulness is something that's seen as negative in our society. It's a sense of diva-ishness, unwillingness to work with others, needing to have one's own way. It's kind of a negative side of will. And willpower is more of a positive side of will. Willpower is actually what we want to really instill in our children, a sense that they can determine who they are and create what they want in the world, that they have an internal strength and that they can believe in themselves. We want them to have a sense of themselves within the larger sense of the community at large, within their school, within their classroom, within their family. There's a self, and then there's a group. And willfulness seems to be negatively responded to by our communities, and we as parents don't really like it when our children are willful because it means they're not actually listening to us. However, we want them to be strong. We want them to have tenacity. We want them to have resilience. We want them to have values that they believe in that guide their lives, which actually requires a sense of will and willpower and empowerment. And so I think that what happens is we work too hard to extinguish willfulness because the way that will comes through early in life, at 2 and 3 and 1 and even 6, is this willfulness, this stomping of the foot no. And that can turn to this off situation. And if we stamp too hard on the willfulness, we can also extinguish a sense of will and we can create an off situation. Remember, the name of the book is Turning No to On. And what I'm talking about here is moving from no to yes and off to on. So when people are responding, when parents are responding or teachers are responding to the willfulness in too strong of a way, they're actually stamping out will. And will is a good thing. Will is a sense of internal strength. And so we need to figure out a way to assist our children in identifying with their will, what they want, where their strengths are, and understanding how to mediate that with respect to the community at large, whether it be the classroom, the family system, their brother and sister, the community at large. So if we can look at how to help a child with this, I think we can really use mindfulness in a positive way. And this is one of the best things about using mindfulness with parenting, is to assist a child to have a mindful concept about what's going on. Now, when a child is 2, it's hard to say as they're stamping their foot, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, what's going on? So I'm not necessarily suggesting it's always a discussion. It's partially a discussion. You want to always be encouraging your children to use communication, even if what you're doing is maybe mirroring to them what you perceive is going on, that they don't want to put their shoes on because they don't want to stop playing and go home. They want to continue doing what they're involved in. And so you can discuss that and talk with them about it while you talk with them about how you can change the situation next time, either working with the transition time that you let them know in advance or working with the amount of time they have with playing. These are all parts of using your mindfulness to help them understand what's underneath that sense of willfulness, so that you're directing their will in a way that will continue to increase in their internal strength and how they interact getting their needs met in the environment at large. One of the things that you can look at to help you with this there's some wonderful books, and they are by some child development theorists by the name of Louise Bates Ames and Frances Ild. And the Ames and Ilds book are wonderful books because they give you sort of at each stage of the game, year 1, year 2, year 3, they talk about what children are going through in their developmental stages. And they can talk about when they're dealing with no in a certain way and how that's going to come through. Or also, you'll find that the books talk about how at some point they're developing some physical skills, and so their emotional skills are less well developed, or they're sort of consolidating those, or vice versa. And that gives you an idea about how your child can have a skill and lose it and then come back. And it helps you to work with this willpower, and willfulness. Another individual that you can pay attention to who's very, very helpful to give you some ideas about um, what's going on with power for children, because power is part of what's underlying all of the will issues, is a man by the name of Erik Erikson. Now, Erik Erikson identified a specific word for each of the stages of psychosocial development. Now, we're going to pay attention to predominantly the first 4 to 5 stages of psychosocial development because those are the ones that bring you to age 19. In the book that I've referenced, Turning Note on the Art of Parenting with Mindfulness, I actually talk a little bit about how the first 12 years work through those first 4 issues. If those issues are not effectively resolved and the child isn't able to really align with the positive elements of that developmental stage, they get the second 12 years, so 13 through 24, to work those things out. So if you get a teenager who's been beautiful and easy to get along with, and then between 13 and 19 they're really tough, you can go back and you add your 12 plus whatever age they are. So if it's 13, you're looking at age 1. If it's 15, you're looking at age 3. And you can look to see which of the issues they're having some difficulty with. You can also use your mindfulness to say what was going on in that child's life during that period of time, and it can assist you in understand what they're trying to work through. It'll also help you to not be so mad at them and frustrated by their different behavior from how they were just a few years before. Then you're working together to help them with their willpower, right? See, so rather than seeing them as this willful adolescent, they're dealing with willpower issues. They're going back and trying to rework some of those important stages. So let's just look at those stages quickly. First, I'm just going to name off what the issues are, and then I'm going to put up a chart that you can look at. So Erik Erikson described that the ages of 0 through 1 year old have to do with this word, hope. And it's an issue of trust versus mistrust. And this psychological crisis that's involved here is whether or not you can depend upon your parents. Do they do what they say? Are they responsive when you need them? So of course that's 0 to 1. So that would be about caregiving at the most basic level. The virtue that comes out of that is this concept of hope. Now, the next issue is, and I think that in hope it means more faith, just my own experience, and a sense of trust. So will is the next word that Erik Erikson chose to use to describe the next set of stages, and that's the toddler stages of 2 to 3 years old. And that has to do with autonomy versus sort of shame and doubt. This is the stage of toilet training usually, especially for girls. This is the stage of toilet training, and when they reference the toilet training stage for boys, even though it can happen up to 5 years old, they're referencing this issue, even though it can happen up to 5 years old. And this is the virtue of will, having your own willpower, being forced to toilet train before you're ready, feeling shameful about it, being unsure, or having it be something you're interested in, something that you and your parent are sort of working through together for you to gain control over the elimination of your bowels. That's what this is all about. And so that's that issue. For the next set of stages, he talks about the word purpose. And that's kind of the virtue that you're looking for, a sense of competence and interest in ability to do something. Initiative versus guilt are the issues. And this has to do with preschool years, 4 to 6 years old. And the psychosocial crisis is initiative versus guilt, as I said. And it has to do with how you figure out what your roles are, who you are, and how you fit in the world. Can you create what you want? So as you can see, this is quite related to the one just before will. This has a will concept too, purpose, right? The fourth one is competence. And this is industry versus inferiority. This is childhood 7 to 12 years. And the psychosocial crisis is industry versus inferiority. The main question is, am I successful or worthless? It is a virtue of competence. And this is one of those issues where you can see that each stage is building on the other. And you can, if you have a very successful completion of a stage, you have a much better chance of completing the next stage and as it continues. You can have a negative thing happen and it may negatively affect previous stages. For example, if your parent dies, that can affect trust and mistrust even if it had turned out very well, because the loss of the parent is such a large issue. I'm going to put those first 3 stages up, and I want you just to look at those. You can see the importance of, I'm trying to get it just right in there. There we go. You can see the importance of trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt. These are very important. Can you see how they're all related to will? The way in which these are all related to will is that having willpower comes from having a sense of trust. If we have a supportive environment, then we can create a very trusting sense of self. I can get my needs met. I can be upset and someone's going to respond. If I'm overly upset, they're going to set boundaries for me. It lets me know my environment is safe. That's a sense of will can then be developed under those conditions. Next, there really is the sense of will. Am I going to be forced to do something I don't want to do? Or do I have some control over my own body and my own environment? To what degree do I have control over my own body and my own environment? These are important questions for a child who's developing in our society. And so willpower and willfulness are directly related to each other. And it's very important that we assist our children as they're working through their willfulness to understand how to direct their willfulness toward a sense of will and willpower. In order to do this, it's very important to use mindfulness, to use that stop, look, and listen method that I talked about in a previous video, to use paradigm shifting to look at it from a different perspective to try to understand where your child is coming from. Now, I'm not suggesting that your children can do whatever they want. I'm suggesting that you use your own capacity toward mindfulness and understanding to guide your child, not squash their interior belief system and not let them do whatever they want. Both of those things are not good, but guide them so that they can make excellent choices. Willfulness is just a way to help you with that. So how these then develop beyond that are the following stages. And I'm going to put those up just for you to look at, and I'll read those out to you. We've talked a little bit already about competence versus, there we go. Competence versus, industry versus inferiority, which is competence issue. That's the 7 to 12 years. That's can I get things done? And then the last one that really gets us to 19 is this issue of fidelity, which is identity versus role confusion. This is when adolescents say, who am I and where am I going? What do I believe in? And he uses this concept of fidelity to talk about that. And basically what he's talking about is, can I get my own needs met and know who I am and also partner with somebody else? Can I trust at that next level? So it's a very important concept. So these are my ideas about willfulness and willpower, that they are related to each other, and that if we squash willfulness in children, we're not actually assisting them at the level that we need to be. And so we want to think about how can we tell them that a behavior is not okay and we extinguish it while still aligning with the will within the child, so that we can guide them to get what they really need, what they want to create, and have a sense of themselves. So I'm Dr. Beth Gineris, and I'm the author of Turning No to On, The Art of Parenting with Mindfulness. I hope this was effective and helpful for you. Sorry for the little squishiness of the Erik Erikson charts, but I wanted to make sure you could see that information too. So go ahead and look at the other videos I have on, and I hope you get the book and enjoy it. Thanks very much.